Hi, welcome back everyone. This is Petri. Just wanted to take just a second to say thanks for all the people that are new to my channel that have subscribed. I appreciate that, and I want to just say that my main goal here at my channel is just to get you guys the best information I can on watercolor painting, techniques, the process, answer any of your questions that you have. So that's my main goal for my channel. Um, on this on this episode here, we're going to look at the glazing technique in watercolor. So, um, there's many different techniques to watercolor, but for painting, and I think the two main approaches are the glazing approach and the alla prima approach. And I tend to use both. Most times I use alla prima, which just means I'm going in and painting everything at one time, and I'm not really, uh, let's say, painting lighter um, washes of watercolor paint, and then going to darker washes of paint over the top in succession, with drying in between each um, wash. So, but here I will sort of, I think I use a combination of both actually. And this is why I would say try all your different techniques with your watercolor painting. Try the glazing techniques, try painting alla prima, and just working with your watercolor paints um, all at one time on your painting. And this way it kind of helps you when you're in certain situations. So if you want to have an easier time on this video, which is the glazing approach, please take a look at the water to paint ratio, a video I did. You just type in water to paint ratio, Chris Petri, on YouTube, and that should bring you right to the video. And if you watch that video, I go into real detail on the water and paint ratios, which is critical when you're watercolor painting. It just will give you a great end result to your paintings and your compositions as you navigate in your watercolor journey. So here I'm just, for kind of people that are maybe new, I'm just gonna, my quick supplies are a pencil, mechanical pencil. I think this is a 7mm or a 9mm. Kneaded eraser, just in case we have to erase a little bit when we're doing our drawing. And two sable brushes, round sable brushes with good points, a small and a medium size. And so these are just, from looking at them compared to to the pencil, you can kind of see the size of them. And we're going to do a small painting here, a small composition, so we're not using a large paper, obviously. When you start doing larger paintings, you incorporate larger brushes, and you just kind of, I find with watercolor painting, it's all about scale. So when you're doing a large painting, you're just scaling everything up. Larger brushes, larger paper, larger amounts of water, larger amounts of paint, larger palette probably, a larger water bucket. So it kind of all just scales up when you're going to start doing larger paintings. But I always encourage everyone, if you're sort of new, to kind of master the smaller paintings first, and then you work your way up, and because that always offers new situations that are going to be challenging when you start to get into larger paintings. And I will do a video on that soon, on scaling up from smaller paintings to larger, and the process of what's probably the best things to consider when you're kind of stepping up your sizes of watercolor paper and paintings. And I just have a sponge here and a water bucket, fresh water, a sponge to check off some water. So if we're painting and we put our brush in and we have extra water on our brush, we can tap off a little bit of water, and then we can go into our watercolor paint palette. So this comes in handy. You can also use a tissue or a paper towel or an apron if you wear an apron when you're painting. Okay, and so we're sort of up to speed on our art materials, what we're going to use. I will now check to see how we're lined up here. Okay, that looks pretty good. So here we just have a boat scene, and I'm going to kind of do the glazing technique as well as kind of keeping a mind on the water to paint ratio as well. So I have my palette here to the left, so we can kind of keep an eye on that too. And we'll get started. So here we're going to go with a lot of water and not as much paint. So this will be our starting point for the glazing technique, is we're going to go with the more lighter washes with lighter tonal values. And we'll do our sky and water. And that'll be our first glazing. So here you can see I'm putting on the lots of water. I leave a little bit of white for the clouds. I'm also going to go in and do the water. So this is basically the glazing technique. We're going to do the lighter glazes first with lots of water, not as much paint. And then once that dries, we'll go in and we'll come through with a second glazing, and then we'll do our final glazing. So the glazing technique actually ties right into the water to paint ratio video, where your first glazing is your lots of water, not so much paint, and then successively as we go through this, we will see that we'll use less water as we go. So now here, I'll do a little more, just a very light wash on the foreground here. And we'll go over this with some green and gold and brown colors for earth tones in the foreground, and once this dries. So now at this point, we let this completely dry. Once we do our first glazing, our first wash, we let this completely dry. Then we come back in and we start doing our second glazing, which will be our middle tonal values and dark tonal values. And then our final glazing will be the final details of the painting, and probably the most the more darkest tonal values in the painting to give us that real finished look to the painting. Okay, so I'm going to make this a three-part series. So this is our first part. We kind of just talked a little bit about our brushes and our paint supplies and tools. And then we said how this ties into the video, watercolor paint, water to paint ratios in watercolor, which is a video I did just recently. And if you look that up, you can kind of look at that video first, kind of practice that technique, a little bit of kind of getting the feel for that three different types of water to paint ratio mixtures. You know, the real light washes, lots of water, the medium feel of the watercolor to paint ratio mixture, and then your really, let's say, your darker tonal value mixtures, which is the third of the three, and that would be, you know, just straight out of the tube color. So that's but again, this is our first glazing. We went with just a real light blue sky color wash here, and then some blue into the water. So this is like maybe a small channel or a small tributary or river area with, you know, some buildings and a boat. And we'll continue to work on this, but we'll go to the next video. We'll take a break now. Always good to take breaks, especially when you're doing the glazing technique. Take a break, get your first washes in. Once your first washes are complete and you've got it all situated the way it looks good to you with your first wash, then let that dry completely, which means you have to take a break probably, 15-20 minutes. And then you can come back and then we can start working on our second glazing. All right, so we'll be right back. We'll have some more fun. We'll do our second glazing. We'll see how the process works, going from one glazing to the next, and then we'll have a great time and going on to our third part eventually, and we'll do our finishing touches to the painting, and then we'll have a complete idea of the glazing technique. Light to dark, glazing technique. All right, everyone, we'll see you on part 2 just in a few minutes.